Welcome to the webinar, everyone. Keep it consistent branding. I'm Linda Remsburg, an associate at Great Lakes Center for Youth Development, and I'll be your host today. We'll get started by pointing out a couple of the features of the webinar. First, you'll see there's the raise hand button, and there might be a time or two when the presenters ask you to raise your hand. So if they do, just click that button. There's also a question box where you can type any questions you have. We'll have a couple of breaks in the presentation and then also a time at the end when the presenters will answer your questions. And I guess with that, I will just turn things over to your presenters, Victoria and Samantha.
Hello, everyone. This is Victoria. I'm so excited to be here today. Samantha will be popping in a little later for her slides. If you've been to the sessions in our series so far, that's kind of how we roll because Samantha's actually down in Lansing and I'm up here in Marquette. So it's really fun to be able to use technology to provide this training while we're in two totally separate areas. So today we're going to talk about branding. Branding, what a big word. There are so many definitions that can be used to describe branding. So while I was working on this, I did a little research, and my favorite one that I came across was from the business directory. Now, bear with me, there's a lot of business jargon in it, but I'm going to simplify it for nonprofits in a second. So the business directory states branding is the process involved in creating a unique name and image for a product in the consumer's mind, mainly through advertising campaigns with a consistent theme. Branding aims to establish a significant and differentiated presence in the market that attracts and retains loyal customers. So when we dissect that, we boil it down, it actually is something that really is applicable in the nonprofit sector. I like to look at branding as creating a consistent theme to attract and retain donors, volunteers, and those in need of our services. So we're going to play a little game right now called How Many Organization Materials Are Pictured? So if you take a look at this picture, if you want to type into the chat box, guess at how many organizations materials are on the table right here. So we're seeing a lot of varieties of colors, different papers, different text, fonts, layouts. What are you guys thinking? We'll give you guys a minute if you want to type it in. All right. Oh, you guys are awesome. You're all guessing the right number. Um, so lots of guesses. Cool. The answer is actually one. These are GLCYD's marketing materials from 2011 to 2014. And we can look at it and see not a lot of consistency, kind of different design on all of these. The brand just really isn't well defined. And I made a lot of them, so I'm okay saying saying that about it. And we'll talk more about kind of the things that we've done to correct that later in the webinar. So, as you can see, brand is really important because some people thought there was maybe two, some people thought there were up to eight, some people thought there were one. It's just really hard to tell how many organizations materials are here. And you want your brand to be something that people recognize. So we touched on this a little bit looking at that slide, why branding is important. First of all, differentiation. I know a lot of people on the webinar are affiliated with nonprofits. So, what makes your nonprofit different from mine? And why should a donor give their hard earned dollar to your organization as opposed to any other nonprofit? Maybe our missions are different. Maybe our strategies are different. Maybe everything about us is exactly the same, but you're based in the donor's hometown and I'm not. By branding, we can differentiate our organizations from others in the market. Recognition. If you do differentiate yourself on the market and you get a gift from a donor, we want to, try our best to keep the donor engaged so that they'll give us money again. Let's imagine your organization changes their name 3 months after a donor gives a gift, and a year later you decide the logo needs to change, so you go for that, and then Another year later, you decide maybe we should get some different colors because we don't want those anymore. And we're going to shorten our name and just go by an acronym. And so 2 years later, do you think your donor will be able to recognize your organization? Probably not. When we look at really strong brands, let's say Coca Cola, Nike, Starbucks, they've done some little tweaks to their brand image. But if you see that green mermaid, you probably know that it's Starbucks. Or if you see the red Coca Cola logo, it's changed, a lot over the 100 years or more that Coke has been around, but you're still able to recognize it. And finally, trust. People are affected by the work of nonprofits, and there's been some kind of scandalous things in some nonprofits with money and where it goes and those type of things. So by having your brand out there, and people hearing the good work that you're doing, and looking you up on GuideStar potentially, if they're familiar with your brand, those just are more reasons for them to trust that you're doing the work that you're charged to do and that you're meeting the goals of your mission. And the more people that you're able to serve and kind of sing the praises of what you're doing, the more trust you build. And then they're going to see your logo and or materials that you created, or be on a webinar like this and be like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. So and so had a great experience. I'm interested in volunteering there. I'm interested in donating there. Or, wow, maybe I should be a board member there. All kinds of great things that branding can help build trust around. So, when we look at our brand, you'll sometimes hear people just reference their logo, their graphic identity as their brand. And unfortunately, branding's not quite that easy. Um, on that first slide, like we talked about, the materials were all very different. And they were using all of the old GLCYD stuff. And we're going to take a look at the new stuff. But on all of that material, our logo was on it. And so just having your logo on something doesn't make it branded. There are all kinds of things that contribute. Some of the main things are your logo, because that is a visual identity that represents you. But then there are your colors. Having primary and secondary colors that are consistent across your materials help build that brand identity. Picking a typeface or font is pretty critical, and keeping it consistent across all of your channels. I know it can be really fun to be like, oh, I'm going to jazz this up with a different font, but the less consistent you are, the less brand awareness that you're building. So you want to keep your fonts consistent on all of your stuff. Um, Photos and graphic elements, those are fun. So they can be kind of tricky. You can choose to use the same style photo for all of your materials. You can decide that maybe your photos are going to be circle instead of square, and that the content inside of them will change. You might decide you like black and white more than color, so all of the photos on your branded materials are going to be in black and white. And then you also have to think about your graphic elements. Like if you have buttons on your website and all of your photos use rounded corners, maybe your buttons on your website should have rounded corners as well. You might want to think about a graph or a chart. If we are using a bar graph, what are the 5 colors we use for bars? Do we do it vertical? Do we do it horizontal? Those type of elements are the things that we want to look at when looking at our brands. Our elevator statement. So we have all of these great people that help our organizations, volunteers, donors, people getting our services. Letting them know what you want them to say about the organization. Because sometimes if you don't do training on this kind of stuff and write down your elevator statement and give it to people and let them know this is who we are and what we're about, they may talk only about one program. And we see that a lot with staff. When you have a staff and there's multiple programs in your agency or organization, elevator statements, if there's not one that everyone knows they should be using, sometimes can be program heavy. So you talk specifically about what you do in the organization instead of what the organization does. Um, so looking at those elevator statements and tightening them up, and you can have, one for staff, one for board, one for volunteers if you want consistent messaging, but coming from a staff is going to sound different than coming from a volunteer or from someone on your board. So looking at those things and getting them built into your brand. And then creating templates. Um, I've found that some of the things that we've worked through, having templates has made it really easy because everyone understands what they're supposed to use. So once you decide all of the components of your brand, you can make these templates. And so we know that all letters look like this, and you just pull up the letter template and fill it in. And the text or typeface font is already preloaded, and the logo is already where it should be, and everything is sized correctly. If you've been actually on the 3 webinars that Samantha and I have done, you may have noticed that we branded them all the same so that if someone were watching the videos on YouTube, hopefully they would recognize that this was part of a series, because not only is it branded GLCYD at the top, so all of our webinars look like that with the blue bar and the logo, but it also has Samantha's branding on the bottom. So by creating templates, it's easy. You can, we just pop it open and we use that for all of our webinar series. At the UP Nonprofit Conference last year, we actually did a branding panel. And that's actually where I got this idea of pitching branding to Samantha to do as one of these webinars. Right before the panel, we started creating a brand guide here at GLCYD, which helps us stay consistent. And when we were talking at this panel, one of the common themes that I saw developing is that nonprofits, especially smaller ones, don't have brand guides, but they wish they did, and they didn't really know where to start. So when we look at what goes into your brand guide, we're basically taking those components that we talked about on the last slide and developing a rule book that's kind of like a reference when you're trying to figure out how to use your logo, what colors you need to use in the top corner of your handout or your brochure. And it takes all of those components that we talked about on the last slide and just tells people how to use them to communicate your organization's message and brand effectively and professionally. So things like your organization's name, how is it spelled correctly? Do you use a certain abbreviation? And if so, when is that abbreviation appropriate compared to the full name? What are your programs and services? Again, spell them out, and then when is it appropriate to use an acronym? Sometimes we get really acronym heavy in the nonprofit sector, and people don't know what we're talking about. So making sure that we always write out the program name first and then abbreviate it. All of the contact information. Sometimes people don't even know that you have a certain channel. Like the other day, I found out one of our board members didn't realize we had a blog, and we've been blogging now for 8 or 10 months. So being able to have a place where all of that is stored and all of those channels are written down, social media URLs, names, web links, all of that kind of stuff can be right in your brand guide so everyone knows and they're able to get to it. If your organization has a tagline, that's something that's really important to put in there. And taglines are normally like 4 to 7 words that sums up what your organization does. Then we have positioning statements or elevator statements, which are those 2 to 3 sentences that we go out and talk about ourselves with. So you also want to have that in there so that people know what they're supposed to be saying. And then you can also add talking points for board and staff if there is a program, or you can even put all of your programs in there. And these are the things that we want to share. These are the statistics. It can be anything from a general statistic to what your program specifically is doing, making sure those are all in there so people know for the next year what they're going to be talking about. If your organization uses a style guide, having the information on the style guide in there so they know what, if they want to look up how something should be abbreviated, things like that, they can reference the style guide by just going online, and a lot of times you can look that up. And then your design elements, how big is your logo going to be? Are we okay with having a black and white logo versus a color logo in some instances because we don't have a color printer capability? What size font are we going to use for headings? What size font are we going to use in letters? What colors are we going to use? And over on the right hand side, you can actually see our color palette, which is part of our brand guide, and we break it down to the red, green, RGB, CKMY, all of those different Pantones, so that people are aware, no matter what program they're in, they can get that color. And our intern, Sarah, actually put this guide together for us, and you can print out that slide and just kind of post it on your desk if you want to, so that you can see what those colors are. And if you type something in wrong, you're like, man, that doesn't look right. You have the color right there to kind of compare. So, with that kind of quick overview of branding and brand guides, do we have any questions yet? And if you have a question, if you'd want to raise your hand, and we will, so that we know you're typing because we can't see that.
Well, Victoria, there's just one question right now, and that is, will the slides be available after the webinar?
Absolutely, and we're recording it too. So you'll get a PDF copy of the slides, and then if GoToWebinar is nice, last time it wasn't. It took me like 2 days to get it uploaded. So hopefully I figured out all of the kinks. You'll hopefully be getting the video this afternoon as well to review it.
I'm not seeing any more questions yet. Victoria, would you like to wait another minute?
Sure, we can wait.
Alrighty.
It looks like there's a hand up there. So we'll see if that question comes through. All right, well, we'll keep going. It looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slides, and then we have another question break. So we'll definitely get to any questions that are being typed. We have 3 question breaks throughout the webinar. So I promise we'll answer your questions. Next, we're going to talk about your brand offline. So a lot of times branding stuff will be online. And Samantha's going to talk a little bit about that after this slide. But we're just going to think about some things, that happen offline that affect your brand. It's important to establish your target audience really whenever you're doing branding activities, be it online or offline. And so you really need to think about who needs to understand your brand, and is your target audience segmentable down to a demographic where you're targeting someone specifically offline. So, for example, you're in if your mission addresses a topic that has a magazine about it, would it help to get involved in that magazine? Is there a publication in your community that everyone reads? In a certain age bracket, that might be somewhere that you want to go, and you know that you're targeting your target audience in that age demographic via offline branding, and in a different age bracket you're doing online targeting. And Samantha will touch a little more on the online stuff soon. Is there a festival that aligns with your mission that you could have a booth at? Do you have a donor or corporate sponsor that has a billboard that they might want to donate to you for a month? Um, Looking at who needs to know about you specifically offline helps narrow in on really unique opportunities that maybe some corporate people may not have the opportunity to do, but because we're nonprofits, and our mission is a lot more community based, we can get out into the community and look for those cool things that really help us stand out in meeting our mission. And I want to give a shout out to the Upper Peninsula Marketing Department, who let me know that they did some research and found out that UP residents love posters. So if you're a nonprofit in the Upper Peninsula, posters can be very effective. And that's this small places, effective spaces thing. When you're in a small community, like a lot of places in the Upper Peninsula, there are places that everyone just goes. It might be the only health food store. And if your nonprofit focuses on food policy or nutrition, this could be a great place to put the poster, because if people are going to a health food store, they're interested in eating healthy, and you might have information on that, and then you can work with that place that all of these health conscious people are going to, um, and your target market's right there. Like you don't even have to find them; they're going there. So looking for those effective spaces that align with your mission. People are a critical part to your offline brand. Board members, volunteers, and staff all represent your organization. It's important to make sure that everyone representing you in the public knows what your brand standards are and how to articulate those correctly. Um, the more consistent you are in your communication, the better. And then, like I said, your brand guide standards, having that document that can be given out to people that are working on your brand, and knowing that you might pare it down to someone that's not, creating marketing materials, but if you have an intern or volunteer that's going to be making this week's donor update brochure, then they're probably going to want the whole thing. Um, and making that brand guide standard really public and available, and talking with people as you sponsor events and making sure they're using your logo correctly. Those are pretty important things that you can do offline. And with that, I'm going to send it over to our online guru, Miss Samantha Collins, from the blog Samantha Elizabeth, and she will chat a little more about your online brand.
All right, thank you, Victoria. Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a fantastic Tuesday. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your online brand, and kind of what that means for your organization. So first, I just want to point out how important your online brand is. I think that when we start talking about digital promotion, whether that be social media or a website, everybody kind of gets a little nervous, because technology isn't always something that we can easily understand. Some people totally get it, and others are still working on that. So that's definitely an obstacle when we look at our online brand, and just finding our comfort level when it comes to the different talents we have in our office, and what people are comfortable using when we're talking about online communications. However, in saying that, your online brand is probably one of the strongest ways to reach your audience, especially in this day and age, in the way that our world socially is connecting. And I say that, but then I've also done some research and come to find that a lot of organizations, especially nonprofits, definitely do not put their resources, their time, their energy, and their money, or what marketing money they have, into their online brand. It's kind of a second thought, or something they're going to get to eventually. And I'm just going to say that's really probably hurting your organization and your business. And we really need to, as nonprofits, work to really understand the best way we can utilize online sources to really promote our brand and talk about our brand and showcase our brand to users. People are getting their information online now, and we just can't be avoiding the fact that our website needs to function appropriately and look nice, and really fit all the different criteria that Victoria kind of already outlined when talking about an offline brand. So, in saying that, online communication is probably other than the traditional media that Victoria talked about. When we say traditional media, we're talking about brochures and handouts and different sorts of displays and things like that might have your logo on it, that you bring with you to different conferences or booths or different sorts of promotional events. So your online brand, it should be consistent with your offline brand. So, of course, the color scheme of your website The logo should be being used properly. And one thing that I want to point out too when it comes to a color scheme is sometimes colors can look a little different online than they do in print. And that's why it's important, as Victoria mentioned, to work with your graphic designer or find a graphic designer and really find out what those colors are, those Pantone colors. They have a really, for people who do graphic design, they have like basically what's like a little code or a little sequence of numbers and letters that identifies a true color, and they are able to pull those numbers for you through programs like Photoshop and InDesign and give you those so that you can pass those on to other graphic designers in the future so that you know that you're using the true color of your brand. So just something to keep in mind. And it's important to use those true colors when you're creating your online brand. So color scheme is also important online. And then your voice. So it's super important that the voice or the type of communication style you're using when it comes to your print materials and such are also relevant and match with your online brand. And so that's something that's you know, definitely a shared thing and that you really want to consider when you're creating and developing your online brand. And then when it comes to content, it's very important that your content is consistent and you're giving your readers and your customers something that they feel they can trust and that they understand and that relates to what you do and maybe what you're either trying to sell or services you're trying to provide. So your content, when you're posting on Facebook, you're posting on a blog, all those sorts of things, really understanding that that's all making sense and is part of a bigger plan. We've talked about in past webinars, we've talked a lot about content, and I feel like I keep bringing that up over and over again, but I think that that's extremely important when we're talking about our brand. And content really circles back, or we really circle back to content in this webinar, in that it needs to be something that is really well thought through and how that relates to the mission of your organization. Because in essence, that's what you're communicating through your brand. So your online brand should also just, as far as the look and feel, logo use and photos, that all should kind of tie into your social media. So I've been to some social media pages where I don't see the logo anywhere. There's random photos as the profile photo, and the cover photo is kind of a random pixelated image. And yeah, I know some of you are like, uh-oh, and want to go check your Facebook pages out right now. But those are the different types of things that I've seen out there. And unfortunately, I don't feel that those are good representations of your business. So really kind of consider how you're doing that. I strongly suggest using your logo as the profile photo and making sure you're checking what those dimensions are for that Facebook photo. You can just Google search Facebook, profile photo dimensions, and they'll pop up little guides that can help you figure out what size that photo is. Otherwise, it kind of crops it funny, and your logo could be cropped. So understanding what are the best things to showcase on your social media, and make sure that ties into your website and to your print materials as well, and the different promotional materials you use that way. I saw a really funny quote when I was doing some research on this topic the other day, and it was, "You are what you tweet." And it was talking about using Twitter as an organization, and how sometimes people get caught up in Twitter and they don't realize that what you're tweeting, what you're retweeting, the kind of communication you're having and the response you're providing to different customers, all of that matters. And so you are what you tweet, you are what you post, you are what you're showing your audience online. And so it's really important to be thinking of those things as you're developing that online brand. Next slide, please. So evolution of a brand. So this is kind of probably maybe my favorite slide, because I've gone through this process in multiple jobs that I've had, as well as personal blog, and something that I think all are being consistent time. They're going to evolve. They should evolve.
Hey guys, it sounds like we're having some audio issues with Samantha. If you just want to hold on 1 second, I am contacting GoToWebinar right now. Okay, try talking now, Samantha.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Oh no. Well, I'll backtrack maybe just a little bit to the beginning of the slide.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay, just feel free to let me know if I need to stop again. Okay, so as I was saying, it's okay for your brand to change over time in a subtle way. As we're learning more about what our brand is for our organization, especially if you're a new organization, or if you're one that's been around for a long time and you're just trying to understand what direction you're going in, brands do evolve and they do change, as Victoria showed you in her little exercise there where she laid out a bunch of GLCYD materials. You could see the evolution process. You could see how things changed, how the color scheme changed, how the logo changed, how layout changed, templates changed, and that's okay, and that's great. But you want to try to do it subtly, and you can do that through planning. So creating long-term plans, be thoughtful of kind of the direction in your organization is going, creating goals, and just having somebody in your organization, probably your director, your communications person, really working through what those things look like in a timeline sort of way. Brands will evolve over time, and you want to make sure that your audience is understanding that, but not noticing it. So if that makes sense. You don't want it to be like, whoa, big, one day all of a sudden your website's changed and all your print materials are changed and everything's changed, because that can be really confusing. You kind of want to ease into it, let them know, make them part of that process. I love when different organizations post different logo designs on social media and ask people to give feedback on which one they like the most and make them part of that process, or let them know, like, hey, look, we changed our logo, what do you think? And get that kind of feedback. And I think that's just kind of a kind, subtle way to let people know, hey, we're growing, we're changing, we're evolving, and we want you to be a part of that process. And I think that's where trust really comes in, and people are able to really kind of be reminded of what your goals and your mission are, and they can connect to that. And I think you can do all of that through online communications. So very important slide, and this is something that, like I said, I know that all organizations are subtly going through over time. So, and definitely something that people continue to talk about, and what does this look like, and how can we communicate this more clearly? Next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience and my personal brand. So my personal brand, my blog, Samantha Elizabeth, well, it started as a photography blog. And I can still remember way back when, about 4 years or so ago, when I started doing photography and I was creating a logo and I was trying to create a website and a Facebook page. I was really torn about whether or not to call it Samantha Elizabeth Photography or just Samantha Elizabeth, because once you create a Facebook page with the name, Samantha Elizabeth Photography, if I ever stopped doing my photography, in a sense where people could purchase my services, like then I don't, then that Facebook page is out there and I can't always change it very easily. And I knew that going into it. So I did my research ahead of time and understanding the parameters that were out there as far as Facebook and changing the name of the Facebook page, and also website, and just putting time into creating a logo and everything. So I kept it simple, and I just branded myself as Samantha. And that was kind of where my photography started. And and people were really receptive to that, and photography definitely shot off, and it went really well for a few years. But I knew that I was going to be moving out of the area, and that I needed to really kind of wrap my head around how I wanted to transition out of photography and into just this lifestyle blog, because I still love to do photography and I love to write, but I didn't necessarily want to continue to allow people to purchase photography services from me. So I needed to transition my blog and my social media and let my customers and anybody that was following along realize that this was something that was taking place. So I definitely had that timeline in mind. I kind of had written out a very rough draft idea of when I wanted to start letting people know that my blog was now transitioning into more of a personal lifestyle blog, and I did that over the course of about 5 years. So years 3 and 4, I started to change my design just a little bit, not much, but just enough so that people could see that I no longer was calling myself Samantha Elizabeth Photography, that it was just strictly Samantha Elizabeth. And then with that, the content started to adjust slightly. I wasn't posting blog posts strictly of photos anymore. Now it was a little bit more of some editorial content and stuff like that. So it took a little bit of a transformation and some transitioning, but it was, I thought, very successful. But that was because I planned for it and I thought through things before just creating them. And I tried to really understand how this would be perceived from the beginning by clients or by people who were going to follow along and be a part of my blog. And like I said, the process is constant. Even today, as I feel like I have a good handle on things, I still trying to understand.
Well, it sounds like we miss Samantha again. And so we will just move forward because she was wrapping up. Her last slide is here. And as you can see, her Facebook page is on the top left area, right up in here, her Instagram and her blog. And so as a blogger, oh, are you back, Samantha?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have no idea what's going on. I'm not even... Okay, so this is really my last slide. So Victoria, if I cut out again, I'm sure you could easily explain it. So by all means, go ahead. So what Victoria's probably about to say is that I took a screenshot of my Instagram, my Facebook page, and my blog. And as you can see, I have the same photo for each of the profile photos. I have a very white, very simple design with black type, and my logo is visible, and I just keep everything pretty consistent all around. And I practice this with all social media platforms. Yeah, and that's it on this slide. So go ahead and go to the next one, and I apologize for the cutting out.
It's all good. So now that Samantha's kind of wrapped up her part, we've talked about online and offline branding. We'll pause for a moment and take some questions if there are any.
Victoria, we do have a question that came in a while back to branding elements. So this is from a nonprofit who uses primary colors in their logo for their children's programs and another set of colors for their adult classes. What do you think of that? Using two different sets of colors.
I think if you have different staff and your children's program and adult classes are very differentiated from each other, I think that's okay. You just want to make sure that if you're using those primary colors in the logo for your children's programs, you're not using those on any of your adult classes materials. So if you have a red logo on your children's programs, and then you have an adult classes brochure and you have like a red border, that would be confusing because your audience is going to associate red with children's programs and maybe green, if that's what your other color is, green with adult classes. And there is actually a couple organizations that do this really well. So do some research and look in, like, just I'm trying to think of one. I know UP Kids up in Houghton uses different colors for their programs. And so all of their stuff about one program is one color, and all of their stuff about another program is another color. And they're a huge organization. And so it makes it easier for people to differentiate their programs, and it's still the same color or same logo. So they don't change the logo color, but the materials for each program are different colors. So that could be something that you want to consider too, is keeping your logo the same across both programs, but maybe all of your children's programs are going to be in a certain typeface and have a certain color, and then all of your adult classes will have a different typeface and a different color scheme to the design layout. Samantha, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I would just definitely agree with everything that you said, and I think I'm a big fan of white space, and so if you get too many colors kind of involved, it can definitely get confusing. And I always like to look at my marketing materials. If it's hard copy materials, lay all of your marketing materials out next to each other on a table and look at them. Do they all look consistent together? And it doesn't matter if you have different programs or whatever. There's different ways that, yeah, you can use colors and layout templates to customize that, make it look a little different. But I would really focus on making sure your logo is everything, and not get too caught up in.
Oh, all right. Sounds like we lost Samantha again. So we will. Are there any more questions?
I'm not seeing any at this time, Victoria.
All right. All right, so Samantha has lost us completely and she can't hear us anymore, it sounds like. So she's going to try logging back in. Um, and I will continue with the next couple slides. If you have any questions specifically for her, type that in. And if she isn't able to rejoin us, then she will follow up via email with you. But I will now talk about rebranding. So there could be a point where you're looking at all of your materials and you realize that your brand just isn't working the way that it should. And so this happened to us about a year ago, more like 2 years ago. It was about a year-long process getting everything figured out, and then we launched about a year ago. And we were working on a campaign with an agency that I referenced earlier, Upper Peninsula Marketing Department, and it was almost like an intervention. They sat down and they were like, "We need to talk. Let's take a look at your logo here. You guys don't really serve the Great Lakes region. You serve the Upper Peninsula. You aren't a center that people come to. You actually go out into the community. You promote positive youth development, but you don't do direct service youth development. And your tagline explains what you do, not why you do it." And so it was kind of like this weird, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, panic. It was like, man, we have this and we've been working so hard. And it was just like set up that it was gonna be hard to get people to understand GLCYD, and we were trying our hardest to get them to understand, and it wasn't working, and the brand was part of the reason why. And so created a new logo, a new set of templates, a new color palette. We developed a new website. And I can honestly tell you, people still don't recognize us. Like, it's not an overnight fix, rebranding. And so if you think that something is wrong with your brand, you can't just rebrand and then tomorrow it's all better. We're thinking it'll be 3 to 5 years before we start to see the recognition of the brand that we want, because you have to get out there and people have to see it consistently over and over and over again, and tie it back to what you're doing. Um, and so we've had this brand for about a year. And we've gotten really good feedback. And it was interesting because some of the non youth serving organizations that we work with are the ones that have been most vocal about how much they enjoy the change, because although it still says Great Lakes Center for Youth Development on our stuff, it's smaller and the emphasis isn't as much on youth development, because we work with all nonprofits as an intermediary, to help them with capacity building, in hoping that it creates a community for youth, to live in, that's healthy and thriving. So you can see how youth development is a part of our mission, and a part of our name, but we work with people that don't directly serve youth. So we definitely had some branding stuff that we had to work through. So now we're going to play another game called Guess How Many Organizations Materials Are Pictured. And these are, if I'm doing my job right, hopefully you guys will see that this is one organization. This is all of our new stuff. This is using our primary and secondary color palette. You see a lot of navy, light blue, orange, logos on everything. Consistent design across. You can see the elements when we have uh, graphs, how we use the secondary colors, those type of things. So that is what it looks. Hopefully you can tell that that's what one organization's materials can look like once you develop templates and have a way for people to easily access them. And it kind of looks like there's different blues, like from the bottom to the top. I promise they're the same. There's just not very good lighting in our conference room, so it looks a little darker down there and a little lighter up here. But they're all the same Pantone number. So now that you've learned all about all of these things, it can sometimes be hard to get everyone on the same page regarding your branding. And so you put together this great, branding strategy plan. How do you get people to buy into it and to actually want to do it? And so I have a couple tips for at least things that have worked for us, that I think can help if you decide that rebranding or pumping up your branding game and evolving, all of those things, if you want to try to pull together a new branding strategy, these are things that'll help. You want to make sure everyone is trained. Your board, your staff, volunteers. Not everyone, like I said, needs to know your whole brand guide from front to back, but there are parts that everyone needs to know. You want to make your materials accessible. If you create templates and then save them on your computer where no one else has access to them, no one is going to use them. But if you set up a shared drive or a Dropbox where people can just go in and get it and they don't have to recreate anything, it's much easier and it's more likely that they're going to use them because everything's already set up. Having technology that supports your brand is critical. If you only have a black and white printer, you're going to want to address that in your brand guide and have color versions of everything and grayscale versions of everything. And realize that there are some fonts that don't come preloaded on computers, like the font that you're looking at right now. We had to go in and install that on every computer that staff was using so that they all had access to it, because it doesn't come standard on Windows or Mac operating systems. And then you want to make sure that even though they're small things, you pay attention to those technology configurations, because it's really easy for someone to get a new computer and you don't even think, oh, I got to load the font on that. And so then things start sliding. So just making sure, even though they're small things, that you follow up on them to help everyone stay consistent. The easier it is for your staff and board members to stick to the brand, the better. We all love our missions, but sometimes the actual mission statement can be wordy and long and hard to remember. So if you're able to pare it down to a shorter positioning statement that's short and to the point, so that It's easy for your board members and volunteers to remember word for word. They're all saying the same thing. That could really make a difference in your brand, especially offline. And then having someone hold you accountable. And that sounds kind of weird, but it's seriously been the best thing that's happened, at least personally in my work life for me, is that we have a marketing and fundraising task force made up of staff and board. And when we did our rebrand and we came out with an actual brand strategy, I was like, look, if you guys see something that doesn't meet our brand standards, I want you to like bring it to my attention, and I want you to challenge me on things that I do create that you don't think align with the brand, because we want everything to be um meeting those standards. And it was 2 weeks before this big event that we have every year, and board members go to it, and it's a pretty fun event. And we've some staff who work specifically on that event, and they created a booklet. And I was like, yeah, the booklet, great, awesome, send it to the printer, whatever. Like, I didn't even think to look at it. And then I saw the proof going around. Um, and I was like, oh my gosh, our logo is only on the back, and it's really, really small, and it's using none of the typefaces that we have in our brand guide. And my task force members are going to be there, and they're going to see this, and they're going to call me out on it at our next meeting. And so I was like, stop the presses, everyone. And like, we got the logo on the front, and we changed some font. And if I didn't have that task force holding me accountable, I probably would have let it slide. And it probably would have been the same next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And so now I know in January I'm going to look at this document, and I'm going to redesign it for the event in April, so that we're able to have everything branded the same way, in the same style, and looking really consistent across all of our materials. And that is all we have for PowerPoint slides. So if you guys have any more questions, now is the time to ask us. And while you're typing them, if you do come up with a thought later, and you want to ask either of us, or you want to check us out on Facebook or Twitter, here's some great ways to contact us via Gmail, and my email, and Samantha's blog, and Facebook, and all of that good stuff. And I just got a message from Samantha that she wants to jump in and say something. Go ahead, Samantha. We can hear you. Oh, maybe not. All right. Are there any more questions? If you want to hit the raise hand button so we know that we're waiting for a question.
Okay, Victoria, there is one asking, how did you decide your color palette? Victoria, we can't hear you.
Aha, how's that?
That's much better.
Perfect.
So again, where did you build, or how did you decide your color palette, and where did you build your colors from?
Yeah, with our old branding, there was a blue that we used sometimes frequently, but not all the time, and it was called Youth Development Blue, and it was a paler blue, and it was kind of like not an exciting blue. And so we sat down with the graphic designers. We had the marketing department help us through our rebrand, and so we knew that blue was something we were going to stick with, and they helped find blues that worked well together. So we actually have 3 different blues that we use. We have a very light blue, that you can see in our logo. We have a dark blue, that you can see across the top, and then we kind of have a mid-color view blue that's not on any of these, but I think you can see it if you look at our logo right here. From the beginning. So here's the lighter blue, here's the mid-color blue, and then we have this navy blue. So those 3 blues work really well together. And then when you look at contrasting colors, blue and orange contrast. So that's why orange was selected, because it's going to draw attention when you have the orange and the blue together. Um, and they helped us work through all of that, but it was a really great exercise because we had never used orange before, and orange is kind of a bold color. And I was a little nervous about it, but it really is eye-catching now when you see our materials that have that orange. It just contrasts really nicely with the three blues that complement each other, and it draws your eyes to the materials. Awesome. Any more questions?
Well, I don't see anyone with their hands up. Oh, wait, we just did get. Okay. No, I'm not seeing anything new.
All right. Well, I guess if anyone thinks of any more questions, oh, I see what she's talking about. Okay. So we have a question about the color palette sheet right here. And so these are just squares made in Microsoft PowerPoint, and then we filled in the square with the color. So these colors are the same colors that you're seeing in our logo and in our PowerPoint. And I can send this color palette slide out to you guys if that's something that you're interested in having. And then you just like could create your own by going into PowerPoint and drawing a square like the shape, and then changing the fill color to the fill that you've decided you want to be on your color palette. All right, any other questions? Oh, I got one that says, please send. I will definitely send out our color palette. It's been extremely helpful for us. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. And hopefully, I'll hear from some of you if you have any questions regarding branding or social media or blogging or any of the topics that we covered in the series. I'll get our contact information back up for you guys. There it is. And we'll also be sending out a series wrap up survey either next week or the week after, because I want to give you guys some time to hopefully implement some of the things you've learned in our nonprofit marketing series. And so watch for that in your email in the coming weeks. And you'll also get the email of the video and the PowerPoint slides and the color palette this afternoon. So thank you again for attending, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you at the UP Nonprofit Conference on September 25th. Bye.